running for Congress in Alabama. So tell me a little bit about how that's been so far. And is this your first time running for Congress or any office?
Yeah, no, this is my first time in politics at all. I was either in the Army or working in the intelligence community for 30 years. And we, could not run for, couldn't be involved. They have the Hatch Act, and now, the Hatch Act doesn't seem to be mean too much in this administration, but we were expressly forbidden from getting involved in political activities. So we left federal service. Barb, my wife and I, we came back here to my home state of Alabama, and I began to realize that Mike Rogers, who's held this seat for like 24 years, was not representing this district well. And the more I got into it, the worse it got. So back last June, coming up on a year, a week from now will be 1 year. Barb and I sat down and had a long conversation about my running for this seat, and we formally declared in September. And we've been running now, pretty much coming up on a year. On the 15th of June was when we made the decision that we were going to run. It's great. We're working in 11 counties. We're a mostly rural district, which means we've got all the problems that rural areas have. This administration is passing bills that will ultimately close half our rural hospitals in this state. We're going to lose a fourth of our nursing homes. We have, still 20% of the homes in rural Alabama don't have access to high-speed internet. We've got poverty rates across the district that are 17% and that's 6 points higher than the national average. But we have pockets where the poverty rate goes up to 33%. We've got a lot of places, rural, small towns, former mill towns where the textile industry left back in the early 2000s, where the poverty rate runs at 43, at 25%. And the median household income is below a living wage. So half the houses, like over in Lynette, over in Chambers County, half the families don't make a living wage. So we've got and there's a lot of infrastructure issues, water systems that haven't been updated. I'm not kidding you. There's water systems in this district that haven't been updated in over 100 years. They're still using cast iron pipes with lead solder. And our current representative, Mike Rogers, who is a strong supporter of the current administration, is just taking actions that's just going to make all that worse. But we're meeting a lot of. Let me get back to the question you actually asked before I started.
Mhm.
How's the campaign going? Campaign's going great. We're working in all 11 counties in the district. We're raising funds. We don't have $3 million in the bank like my opponent, but he's taking money from corporate PACs and from foreign interest PACs, which we are not doing. All of our money so far has come from individual donors. But we're meeting a lot of enthusiasm. Like I was telling you about before, I was at an event last night where we had everybody from the Democratic nominee for governor all the way down to state house races. We're all in one place supporting each other. So there's a lot of enthusiasm among Democrats, independents, and what I call the swayable Republicans.
Mhm.
33% of the state are hardcore, dyed-in-the-wool MAGA Republicans. We're never going to get to change their minds. But the other 66% of the state is either already with us or they're movable. So we're working to talk to those people every day, and we're getting out and like I said, I was at an event last night. We've got an event planned on Thursday. We've got another one I think is going to pop up on Tuesday. So we've got 3 or 4 events this week, and this is an incredibly slow week for us.
Yeah.
So we're actually getting out and meeting a lot of people and hearing from a lot of them, and they're really excited about what's going on. Not only with my campaign, specifically my campaign, I'm getting a lot of positive reactions, but Democrats as a whole in the state are doing, getting a lot of enthusiasm this year.
Right. And I mean, you mentioned that there are some MAGA Republicans that will just never change their mind and will never vote for a Democrat, which is the crazy thing to me because there are people that love their party more than they love their community. And if there is someone that comes along and wants to change things, no matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, you know that there needs to be some change in leadership. And I mean, that's what we saw in LA. We know that LA is a mess, but people still voted for the current mayor, Karen Bass, which it just doesn't make sense to me that if there is someone that comes along, whether it be a Democrat or a Republican, with better ideas on how to fix the community, they're still going to vote against that solely over the fact that they're from a different party.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's going on here in Alabama as well is, I mean, the Democratic Party has been beat down here pretty hard for, ever since, for almost 40 years. Once Reagan got into office and that and uh, uh, white Democrats went Republican, the Democratic Party here was kind of out in the wilderness for a long time. In this district specifically, I've gone back and talked to, everybody that's run in the last 8 years. And it's really been 8 years since a serious campaign was mounted in this district because Democrats just couldn't get the resources together, couldn't get the people together to organize it. So we haven't really been, so a lot of this falls onto, the blame for where we are as far as how red this state is falls back on Democrats because
Mhm.
we haven't really done a good job. My job before, when I got out of left federal service, I had always been a historian, but then I got formally trained. I got a master's degree a couple of years ago in history from Auburn University. And, taking those tools and looking at the politics in Alabama, the Democrats just sort of shut down in the rural areas and weren't really providing a good alternative to the Republican message, which was, very strident, very absolute, but now people are beginning to see that, when they say America first, they're not talking about communities that I go to every day, like Ashland down in Clay County, like Wedowee up in Randolph County, like Center up in Cherokee County, like Heflin up in Cleveland County. These are communities, vital communities that have just been ignored.
Mhm.
And their problems have not been addressed. And in the last 18 months since this new administration took over, our member of Congress has been voting for bills and laws that are going to make things significantly worse in this district.
Yeah.
And then he stood by and let, one of the worst things that's happened in this district was because we are largely rural. There's a couple of urban pockets like Auburn, Opelika, where I am, Anniston, Gadsden. There's urban pockets, although, coming from LA and Las Vegas, you would not think of these as big cities.
Mhm.
You would still probably see them as little towns. But even those places really depend on the rural economy. And when Donald Trump put in tariffs, illegal tariffs on agricultural products, our soybeans are our number one cash crop in this state, and it collapsed the overseas soybean market.
I remember that.
Our soy, yeah, cotton, soybeans, and peanuts are our big cash crops in this state. And all of them are losing money. Cotton lost, according to the Alabama Farm Alliance, cotton lost $230 an acre at least this year.
Wow.
Yeah, soybeans I think lost almost $130 an acre, and peanuts lost $2 an acre. I mean, our farmers are just gutted because of this, and now because of the war with Iran and 20% of the world's oil supply being off limits, diesel fuel has gone up over almost 70% here. So when a farmer goes to fill up his combine or his tractor or that, he's now paying almost twice what he used to. So you
Mhm.
take away their foreign markets, you significantly increase their expenses, and you're going to see massive numbers of farm bankruptcies. Well, our member of the House of Representatives, Mike Rogers, has said nothing about it
Mhm.
except to support the president. And he's the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. So he is in the perfect position to stand up for our farmers. And he has done nothing about it. He has literally said nothing.
And it seems like it's stuff like that that just never changes because there are so many candidates, especially now, or incumbent candidates still running for re-election, and their opponents keep saying the same thing that they're in office, but they just don't do anything about any of the issues facing the communities. So this is not something that is just unique to a certain district. This happens all over the country.
Yeah, but I think this year, and again, I haven't had the time to really focus. I've watched watched the California elections a little bit,
Mhm.
and I think again, I'm not really sure that The quality of the candidates that was running there. That jungle primary that they run out in California,
Mhm.
just that's insane to me. 67 people running for governor, and the top two get moved forward. I mean, that's just nuts. But what we're seeing here in Alabama is we have a whole crop of people that are running for office that have, running for, if you just look at the House of Representatives, we've got two seats that are currently held by Democrats, Terry Sewell and Shamari Figures, and they are both, I mean, great legislators. But in all the other five districts, we've got people that are running that have never run for office before at any level. It's just we have over in District 4, we have a runoff happening, well, that's because they screwed up and the court allowed them to really hose Alabama with redistricting. But down in District 1, we've got Clyde Jones. He's a retired Army NCO who ran for school board once years ago.
Mhm.
Up in right next to me in District 4, we've got Amanda Pushchek. She's a frontline nurse that has never run for office before. Over in District 5, we've got Keith Pilkington, who's an Army veteran, who's a nurse. And then up in that's District 6, and up in District 5, we've got Andrew Sneed and Candace DeVillay, who are in a runoff next week. And neither one of them have ever run for office. I mean, we've got
Mhm.
this entire crop of candidates, and then we've got people up and down the ballot running for state houses that, here in my home district, we've got a 22-year-old recent college graduate, a young woman of color named Hazel Floyd, who's running for the state legislature
Wow.
because she sees the problems in her district as being so, and she's stepping up to run. I mean, it's just really, every day when I find it hard to get up, I mean, this is exhausting. Running for office is tiring. But when I have trouble getting up and getting out of bed and getting back to it, making the phone calls and writing the emails and just day to day the grind of running, I think of people like Hazel who should be doing, who should be finding her first job or applying to law school or
Mhm.
something, and she's running for office because she cares so much. My friend Pam Howard's running up in District 40. She's got a ton of stuff that she could be doing, but she is elected to run for the state house. So my friend Michelle French, just next door over in Chambers County, she's doing the same thing. She was retired and she decided to come back out and get to work running for the state house. So I mean, we've got a lot of great people that are really pushing this campaign as hard as they can, and we're going to see a lot of change here in Alabama in November, and it's going to be really great to watch.
Yeah, no, that's exactly my own feeling, and especially across the entire U.S. because there are so many good candidates running, but the thing is that they get overshadowed uh, by career politicians.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the incumbent in this country has always had the advantage. I mean, there ain't no doubt about that. But I think now for the first, in a long time, we saw this back, I think, in the 80s and the early 90s, where people were beginning to really question, the Democrats and a lot of places gotten, especially like in the South, had gotten very comfortable. They said we'll never, Alabama will never elect a Republican governor. Well, in 1986, we did, because the Democrats had gotten so complacent and so overconfident that in 1986 we elected Guy Hunt as governor. I think we're reaching that point again where people are beginning, in Alabama, the great things they did in this legislative session was they managed to rename formally the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America.
Mhm.
I mean, it was just silly cultural war stuff like that,
Yeah.
and people are beginning to question whether or not in Alabama a state that's at the bottom, it's in the bottom five in education and life expectancy and infant and maternal mortality, in median salaries. I mean, everything. you know we need to be fixing the problems with our education system here in Alabama, not figuring out what we need to call the Gulf of Mexico, because hell, everybody that grew up here calls it the Gulf anyway. We don't
Right.
call it I'm going to the Gulf of Mexico. We just say we're going to the Gulf. But I
Amen.
mean, we still don't have we still don't have a lottery here in Alabama. Our schools are underfunded because we don't, every other state around us has got a lottery, got casino gambling. And the state legislature can't even seem to figure out how to have a conversation about that. So in a lot, and again, a lot of our Republican members of Congress, I mean, Mike Rogers, the guy I'm running against, hasn't had a town hall meeting in 9 years.
Wow.
So he never speaks to his constituents. Robert Alderholt, who's in fourth district, next one over, that my friend Amanda Puschek is running against. He hasn't held a town hall in almost that long. I mean, these people never go out and meet their constituents. So we've they I the Republican Party in Alabama has gotten overconfident. They're not meeting the needs, and they're not speaking because they don't know what the needs of the people are.
Mhm.
They're strictly meeting the needs of their corporate donors. So we're in a position now to where we're able to make a case where no, that is not what we need. We need somebody on the ground who's talking to people who understand the needs of the community so that we can move this state ahead. And when there's a need for federal support for that, we will have advocates in Washington that can bring that support to the state to
Mhm.
improve the lives of the people who live here.
Yeah. So how's the political climate in Alabama currently? And what I mean is, so you don't even have a Republican running against the incumbent to unseat them. Is that why they're in office for so long?
Yeah, we've got a lot. Well, I mean, we were running more Democrats this year than we have in literally a decade. I
Mm.
mean, up and down the ballot, we've got every state constitutional office, governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, agriculture commissioner, comptroller, every constitutional office in the state has a Democrat running for the office. First time that's happened in a long time.
Wow.
Every federal office, one senator and seven members of the House of Representatives, we have a Democrat running. That hasn't happened in 8 years. And then up now, we've still got too many uncontested Republican districts out there in the state House and the state Senate, and we would love to see that improved on. But it is significantly better than it was. There's a guy named John Dickinson up in, I think he's up in the state House third district up in Huntsville. That seat has been uncontested for 22 years. And now John's stepping up and running for that district, and full credit to him because that's a pretty Republican area he lives in.
Mhm.
But he's stepping up to give the people an alternative. I think once people begin to get used to the concept that Democrats are running in a lot of races, they're going to start voting for Democrats because they're now actually, because for so long people just didn't have a choice. They didn't bother to vote. I think now we're going to see that a lot of people are seeing there's a choice, so they're going to vote. We had our primaries a couple of weeks ago, and the number of Democrats voting in the primaries shot up by like 35-40%. Number of Republicans voting in the primaries dropped by 20%. So, I mean, we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm because we do have so many Democrats on the ballot this year.
Yeah, no, and I hope that something actually happens because it seems that you get this a lot from the party that's currently in power. So if Republicans are in power, you see a lot more issues coming from Republicans, and the same thing with Democrats. And I think that kills the persuasion of the party being better for the people because let's take Democrats as an example, and the reason that they lost like they did back when Joe Biden was running for re-election and he got knocked down and or knocked out, and Kamala took its place. What happened there was that Democrats also got too confident that they had it in the bag, and we
Yeah.
saw what happened. And that's what I see every election is once the party takes power, they have the opportunity to do something special, but they never do.
Yeah. I yeah, I watched 2024 happen. I had not decided to run for office. In fact, at that point in time, 2024, this seat that I'm running for, Mike Rogers was unopposed, which really, and again, that didn't sit well with me. But there was a lot of mistakes made, and I kind of knew that they were making mistakes at the time. Clearly Joe Biden said he was going to be a one-term president, and he didn't stick to that. If he had, it would have been history would be completely different at this point. I think what we learned there, though, was we can't take any of our constituencies for granted. Like I am. I mean, it's almost axiomatic that the black community is always going to vote Democratic. Well, I don't take that for granted. I am out,
Mhm.
talking, about 25% of the registered voters in this district are people of color. And I'm out talking to them every day because
Mhm.
I need to hear what their problems are. And I don't just assume that they're going to show up and vote for me. The problem they're having is, and then what we have to overcome is, certain marginalized communities may not vote Republican,
Mhm.
but if you don't give them a reason to go to the polls, they're just not going to vote at all. They just won't show up because they
Yeah.
don't see it's going to make any difference in their lives. So we're talking to, and a lot of people a lot of and again, when you run for office, you get you would be shocked at how many experts there are to tell you how to do your job.
Mhm.
And a lot of the experts have been, they watch my social media feeds and they see that I'm engaging with a lot of community groups that are in socially economically deprived areas. And they're, like, why are you talking to those guys? Well, because those guys vote. We were at Pride here in Auburn, and we have a celebration called Pride on the Plains. We went to Pride.
Mhm.
And when people started asking us about that, I'm going like, well, number one, they vote. And number two, why wouldn't I talk to those people,
Mhm.
everyone there? Because there is, when I represent this district, I'm representing all 720,000 people that live in this district.
Yeah.
And we show up at events. We're going to Juneteenth on next Saturday here in Auburn. We'll be at Juneteenth in Opelika the next Friday. We're going to, man, on June 19th, I've got like four things to do in one day.
Wow.
We've got a breakfast, we've got a parade, we've got a street fair, and there's something else that somebody asked me to come to. But we're showing up and spending time with these people to show that we are going to represent them.
Mhm.
So, and we also do things like we go talk to firefighters, we go talk to librarians, we go talk to. I was up at the up in Alexander City, which is a little town up in Tallapoosa County. Used to be a big mill town. Mill closed. Now it's not as big. But I was up there talking to the Humane Society.
Mhm.
Just talking to them about how they're doing, how things are going, because this district is comprised of 720,000 people, and my job when elected will be to represent all of them, whether they voted for me, whether they voted at all, whether, no matter what, whether or not they can vote, because we have a big problem in this state with people who have, criminal convictions that
Mhm.
it's hard to get their rights to vote back. So, I mean, we're dealing with, all those people, will be my constituents when I get elected.
Yeah, and
So, and that's what we're fighting to show them.
so something that I like that Bernie Sanders actually did was he sat down with Republicans to discuss his own positions and not have the media basically portray him differently, because I think that's what matters the most, and it's the media especially will paint a picture of how you are without you being able to explain yourself, and when you do, they twist your words. But the thing that also matters the most is being able to sit down with people that you know are not going to vote for you and listening to what their needs are, because we are also missing that a lot. Because if you have a group of people that you know that are not going to vote for you, you're just going to dismiss their views.
Yeah. No, we go to street. I mean, this happened. The very, very first event I went to as a candidate was a street fair up in Roanoke, Alabama. And Roanoke is a little teeny tiny. It used to be a big, thriving farm community, not thriving so much anymore. Like a lot of our communities here in East Alabama, where the economy was built on cotton, it's sort of fallen away, and they're struggling. But we go to these places, and I was handing out cards, and I was saying, "Hi, how you doing? My name's Lee McInnis. I'm running for Congress." And a lot of people would just take the cards and say, thanks, I'll look at this later. But I mean, a couple of them would look at me and say, um, are you a Republican or a Democrat? And I would say, I'm running as a Democrat. And they were going like, I would never vote for a Democrat. And then my immediate reaction to that is always, well, why's that?
Hmm.
And so many of them look shocked because they think that by saying I would never vote for you, the conversation's over.
Hmm.
And when I don't allow the conversation to end, and I ask them, so why
Hmm.
is that? What is it about Democrats that you don't like? And they will sometimes tell me things that, and there are some issues that we are not going to agree on.
Mhm.
And the big one that's been coming up of late is I have a very, I think, a moderate position on guns.
Mhm.
Having used guns, professionally, I was carrying firearms was part of my job fairly regularly throughout my career. So I think I have a very moderate, but a very common sense approach to guns. And some of them say, if you're going to pass any gun law, I can never vote for you. Okay, I understand that, and we're not going to agree on that. Let me ask you a question though. What do you do? Well, I run a farm supply business. How's business been the last year and a half? And they look at me and they go, well, it's been awful. So, let's put the discussion of guns aside for a minute. Let's talk about how your
Mhm.
business is doing. And suddenly they're engaging with me. And suddenly they realize that I'm talking to them about, how they're going to pay for their kids' college, how they're going to make how they're going to cover their mortgage payments. I was talking to a farmer, beef farmer, who absolutely did not want to have anything to do with me. But then when I asked him, I said, "Sir, what do you do?" And he says, "Well, I'm a beef farmer." And I said, "Well, how's that going?" And he said, "It's not good, but do you care?" And I went, "Well, I asked you, sir." And we got to talking. And at the toward the end of the conversation, he looks at me and he says, "I think I'm going to have to sell off my herd to keep my farm this year."
Wow.
And I said, "And what are you going to?" And I looked at him and I said, "I'm really sorry to hear that, but I have to ask, what are you going to do next year?" And he goes, "I'll figure that out next year, I guess." And I went, "Listen, I'm having this conversation with you." And he had actually brought up Bernie Sanders and AOC and Rashida Tlaib and all those guys. And I'm going like,
Mhm.
I'm not them. I respect them. I love Bernie Sanders. Love AOC. I think they're great. I think they're fighting for their constituents the way I want to fight for my constituents.
Mhm.
But my job is to represent the people in this district, not to represent the people in New York's fourth.
Mhm.
So let me talk to you about what we might be able to do to help you out. And so we had a conversation and he walked away. We shook hands and he walked away. Is he going to vote for me when I'm in November? I don't know. He may just decide not to go to the polls. He's so frustrated. And so just heart sick at what's going on. But for a while, I now know more about what he needs and what he is experiencing, which my opponent, Mike Rogers, is never, ever going to do. He's been in this seat 24 years.
Wow.
No one ever sees him. He never talks to any. He does photo ops. And I have a ton of people that have reached out to me and said, "Yeah, hey, Mike Rogers was here. He walked in, took 5 pictures, turned around, walked out." I said, "Well, who did he talk to?" He said, "He didn't talk to anybody, and we weren't allowed to talk to him." So I think people are going to see that they're going to be presented with two options. One, and the MAGA Republicans are going to vote for him, and I accept that. And I'm not, and I'm not angry about it. I just accept that. But then again, there's going to be a lot of other people that are going to see me showing up in downtown center Alabama and showing up in Heflin, showing up in these small communities.
Mhm.
And over a 500,000 people in this district live in rural areas, and they're
Yeah.
going to see me working, hoping to work to be hired as their advocate in
Mhm.
D.C. And hopefully that will have an impact on them. And I'm sure that, it is, well, I already know it is having an impact on them because I get people that talk to me and say, "Yeah, I saw your stuff on Facebook. I would have never talked to a Democrat before, but you seem like, you're a nice guy."
Mhm.
My wife, Barb, she comes to a whole lot of events with me. And she says she has people walk up to her all the time, say, "You're his wife, right?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm Barb. How are you?" She goes, "Is he serious? He seems very open and honest and transparent." She goes, "Yeah, he doesn't, that's just who he is. He doesn't have, he's already had a career. He doesn't need to, get elected to office for anything other than to serve." And
Mhm.
I think that's beginning to have impact.
Yeah. And people need to realize that if you take labels away, we are practically the same. We all want a lot of the same things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We all want our kids to get a decent education, a free quality education in a safe environment. I have yet to have anybody tell me that they don't want that.
Mhm.
I have yet to, we've got places in this district where from the time you call 911 to the time you get to a hospital, to a trauma center, it's 2 hours.
Wow.
And that's the best case scenario, because we've got two ambulances covering half a county. So if the two ambulances are out, you're literally out of luck. Nobody wants that. We've got 5 counties in this district that don't have a pediatrician in the county. We've got 6 counties that don't have a trauma center. We've got one county that doesn't have a full-time doctor at all.
Mhm.
And nobody wants that. Nobody is in favor of that. But I think it sort of sneaks up on you to where when you're suddenly, I was way back a while ago, I was talking to a grandmother who has custody of her two children. Family circumstances have just sort of dictated that, and she took custody of her two grandkids. And I asked her what her worries are, and she says, "I'm terrified one of my grandkids is going to get sick in the middle of the night." And I went, "Well, why is that?" And she said, "We're an hour and 20 minutes from the nearest emergency room." And I'm like, "Yeah." And if they need a doctor at 2 o'clock in the morning, they have to drive all the way to Anniston, which is an hour and 20 minutes away. And I think people don't think about things like that until they have to think about things like that. And then now people are beginning to go, wait a minute, hold on a second. Why is it that Birmingham and Atlanta and Anniston and Gaston, why can't we have that same kind of service? Why don't we have, why is this rural healthcare crisis such a big deal? Why are hospitals closing? And then you just point out, well, your member of the Congress, Mike Rogers, voted to cut $1 trillion out of the Medicaid Medicare budget. And he says if they control the House next year, they're going to get rid of Medicaid altogether. They're just going to end it. And so half of our children in this
Oh.
state won't have health insurance. So, I mean, we just need to make this case over and over again and tell them, Sharia law is not going to happen in Alabama. You should not be worried about that. You should be worried about where your pediatrician is going to be when your kid needs to go see a doctor. Those are the things you need to worry, and whether or not you're getting clean water when you turn the tap on in your kitchen. Those are the issues that we're running on.
Yeah. So why are they so interested in cutting Medicaid and all those programs?
I think I think it plays well. I think they've inculcated this idea within their base that there are people that are getting over. I mean, middle class people across the board. Doesn't make any difference if you're black, white, brown. Doesn't make any difference who you are. If you're in the middle class, you're in the working class. We're all struggling right now. And they've been convinced that as little as you have, somebody else is trying to take it away from you. And they're trying to take it away from you through Medicaid, through SNAP, food stamps. You're being you're paying for their lifestyle, which is totally bogus, which none of that is true. But they've said it so often for so long, they made people convinced that if you're on Medicaid, you're clearly stealing from the government. I've had people that have come up and said that to me point blank. I'm going like, that half the children in the state get their health insurance through Medicaid, right? It's called the Child Health Insurance Program. And they look at me and they go, "That's not true." And I'm going like, literally it is true. You can go look it up. And I always tell people, go Google it when you get home, or get your phone out and let's
Yeah.
Google it right now. Um, but people have been fed these stories to keep people in power. Like I said, and it's come up in Alabama. It's one of the things the state legislature was working on this session was Sharia law. 1.2% of the population of this state says they're Muslim. 1.2% of the state is not going to rewrite the state constitution. I'm sorry, that's just. But they keep whipping that fear up. We have the same thing with trans athletes. Every time somebody brings up trans athletes as a major issue that we face, I'm like going, "How many trans athletes do you think there are in Alabama?" And nobody can ever give me an answer. And I said, "Well, how many, I can give you numbers on the people, you can't tell me how many trans athletes they are, but I can tell you 130,000 people have lost their health insurance since the
Mhm.
One Big Beautiful Bill Act passed. That
Yeah.
we can quantify." And people are beginning to sit there and go, "Well, wait a minute. Maybe I have been focused on the wrong thing."
Mhm.
When we bring up the Brookings Institute study that says of three groups, undocumented immigrants, documented immigrants, and natural born U.S. citizens, undocumented immigrants are the
Mhm.
least likely to commit a violent crime in this country. When you start showing them evidence, they begin to, a lot of people, well, some of them just retract back into their shells and they go with whatever they're hearing on their in their news bubble. But I mean, a lot of we every day we get people that are going like, "I checked out what you said and it's true." Now, I've got no reason to lie to you at this point in my life.
Mhm.
I don't need to compromise my integrity that way to get elected to a job that I want this job. I want to serve the people of this district, but I don't need the job. I've already had a great career. I spent 30 years in the intelligence community and in the Army. I've already had a great career. I'm doing this simply because I want to serve the people because they deserve better representation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it almost seems like they'd rather vote for someone that just won't listen to them rather than someone that will listen to them and may do things that they just don't like, or vote for certain bills that they don't that they don't really like, but at least you'll listen to what they want and their needs.
Yeah. And I got very lucky growing up. My two parents were really unique for Alabama in the
Mhm.
period. My father had been an infantry company first sergeant in the Korean War and was a leader in one of the first racially integrated combat units in the Army. My mother was a union member for 40 years. So I grew up in a very pro-labor household that had a very I mean, I'm not saying that my father was marching with Dr. King, but my father knew Bull Connor and just did not want to have anything to do with him because he knew he was lying about race.
Mhm.
My father always used to tell us that, the best friend a poor white man ever had should be a poor black man, and it's a question of economics, not race. I mean, that's the environment I grew up in. And I've always carried that with me, and that was the belief system I worked with. So now it's just kind of natural for me to talk to people with that in mind. Is that, I mean, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg are not looking out for the middle class in the third district in Alabama. They do not
Mhm.
care a bit about, poor farmers up in Roanoke, Alabama. They do not care about the guy that's running the tractor service firm, business over in Ashland. I mean, they care about maximizing their profit. We need to get within people's thought processes where when we start talking about unions, we start talking about, we can break through that circle of information, that bubble of information they're living
Mhm.
in that says if we unionize, the businesses will leave. Well, we know that's not true. We have evidence to show that. But they have heard for so long that the unions are bad and they will bankrupt businesses. We need to get within that information loop and sort of make sure they hear an opposing position backed by facts, not just by fear.
And it seems like there are certain groups that hold all the information and they don't allow that information to get through.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, and I'm not going to name any networks or anything else, but there are people who, there have always been people. I mean, if you go all the way back through history, there have always been people that, there were the haves and the have-nots, and the haves have always worked to keep the have-nots, in line. We didn't see that really start to break until the second part of the 19th century,
Mhm.
when labor started organizing. But I mean, I don't want to make it seem like this is a class war, but what we need to do is we need to have people that are advocating and being honest with the people that are struggling. I paid 18% of my income in federal taxes last year. Elon Musk paid 3. How is that fair? There are 85 multinational corporations in this country that paid no income tax last year, and they did billions of dollars in business. How is that fair? When I've got
Mhm.
small business owners here in this district that are going out of business because they can't keep up with their taxes. I mean,
Wow.
that's just not fair. And we need to have that conversation where we need to rebalance these scales. And we need somebody that's not, following their corporate donors. Like I said, I'm not taking any money from corporate interest. I'm not taking any money from foreign interest, which has cost us. But we're pro union, we're pro worker, we're pro small business, we're pro farmer, and keeping that money out of our bank account means we are also independent. So when we go to Washington, we can fight for the people of this district and not for anybody that donated a specific amount of money to us.
Yeah. So do you think that there is some time in the near future where running without corporate PAC money could be a winning strategy? Because it seems that a lot of people that are running without raising any corporate funds are kind of falling behind.
Well, John Ossoff over in Georgia is running without corporate money.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't know what his fundraising organization, how he's got that organized, but I mean, he's doing fine. Graham Plattner up in Maine, he's had his problems in the last week, but he's running without corporate donors.
Mhm.
I think more and more with, we don't need big money to get through. I'm boosting posts on social media for $12 a week, and
Mm.
if I can put out and, if I can keep those up and circulating and let people know what we're fighting for, I have to be very pointed with my ad buys. I mean, I have
Mhm.
to be very, very specific, but I mean, there's a lot of ways that are very inexpensive to get through to people.
Mhm.
So I think, I mean, we've raised, I mean, compared to Mike Rogers, we've raised, I mean, it's hardly a fraction. But what we're able to do with that is to get out there and meet people. We're able to, we're going to be buying yard signs in the next week, and that's just fantastic for us because a
Mhm.
ton of people are asking. But those things are expensive, so we had to wait and be patient. But like I said, I just boosted a post, and that covered basically the entire district, and it cost me $12 for 4 days. So we can get through to people, and we can make our case. We just have to be very deliberate and very smart about how we do it.
Yeah, no, that's true, but yeah, it's incredibly hard because it's not just the money itself, but
Yeah.
uh, making the campaign look legitimate and just being able to run against campaign that has just an immense amount of money and connections.
Well, I think also that I'm in kind of a unique position, and again,
Mhm.
a lot of the people I talk to you about, I mean, like Amanda, who has been a career, she's been a frontline nurse for a career. Clyde, who's been a retired Army first sergeant. Keith, who's a nurse and a Iraqi freedom veteran. I spent 30 years in the Army and in the intelligence community. I went to Iraq once and Afghanistan twice in that capacity. I mean, we have a career, we have careers of service. All of us
Mhm.
do. And this is just running for office is just a continuation of that service. So it's very hard to just sort of play us off as
Mhm.
dilettantes or somebody who wants to just, who's playing at politics.
Mhm.
We've all got careers of service that we're bringing to the game. And it makes it very, very hard for people to dismiss us. It's just, I mean, some limousine liberal who's just showing up to make the talking points. We've all sacrificed for our careers before, and now we're taking that same attitude into public service into this election. And so it's very difficult for them to, I've had people that have, on a small level. I think the Republican Party in Alabama is going to try to ignore me until probably middle of October and pretend I'm not there,
Mhm.
which is fine. We'll teach them that lesson. But I think when they finally do, they're going to have a real trouble getting wrapping their heads around how they're going to deal with all of us because all of us are running independent campaigns. We're not getting any money from the national party. We're Democrats because we believe that elected officials should serve people,
Mhm.
not serve corporate bottom lines, and that's why we're running. And
Mhm.
it's going to be very hard for them to tell us that tell people that these people are anti-American. When three of the of the people that are running in the 5 districts, three of us are combat veterans.
Mhm.
You can't really tell us we're anti-American. You really can't tell us that we don't understand what this country's about.
Mhm.
So in who we're serving. So I think that's going to present them with a massive challenge when we're running against in every instance career politicians. Like Mike Rogers has been a career politician for 40 years. When I enlisted in the Army, he had already been he was already running for office.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, and I did 30 years in the Army and in the intelligence community, and he was already, running for the county commission back then. So, I
Mhm.
mean, we're presenting a challenge for them that I think they're going to have trouble overcoming.
Yeah, I hope it actually changes things because it seems that every election is the same thing and the same people keep getting voted in. And I don't know what is the reason behind people voting for them if they don't really do any campaign other than
Uh,
just having, the R next to their name.
Yeah, we've dealt with that a lot. And my friend Bradley Turner, who lives up in Cleveland County, sort of gave me the answer for this. A lot of people have come to me and said, "Hey, listen, what do you tell a Trump voter, somebody who voted for Trump 3 times? What do you say to them when they say they want to talk to you?" And I, and I had, knew that they had been told we're going to end forever wars. And then they were, now we're in a war that seems to have no end in Iran. They were told that we're going to fix the economy is leaving you behind and we're going to fix it. And now we're looking at inflation that's rising, fuel prices that are heading toward doubling in the last 4 months. They were told that they were fed a whole host of issues about, told immigrant crime was going to kill you. You're all due to be murdered. Well, then they turn ice loose on Minneapolis. So, and I was struggling with what to say to people who said, I voted for, Donald Trump 3 times. I voted for Mike Rogers, he's run 11 times. I voted for him nearly every time he's run. What do you say to those people? And Bradley Turner just looked at me and said, you know what you tell them? You say, welcome home. It's time to get to work. We've got work to do here in the 3rd district. Let's get going. I will not hold anybody's prior votes against them if they're willing to have the conversation, if they're willing to sit down and talk. And even if ultimately they don't vote for me, I'm still representing them when we go to Congress. So having those conversations are incredibly valuable because not only do I get a chance to have a one-on-one conversation with them away from the noise in the industry that is built up around giving them information, but it also gives me an idea about what they're hearing and what they're thinking about so that we can actually move the conversation forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. I hope that the campaign goes very good for you, but well, it's very interesting to see what's going to happen because I mean, Republicans, first of all, their ideas were a lot of their ideas were pretty good when they ran this time around, but it just seems like they did not do any of it. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens because a lot of Republicans are tired of voting for something and not getting anything back in return.
Yeah. And the Democrats, especially in this is a largely rural district, and we're going out there and make it and having the conversations with people that are involved, that live in the rural communities, and even like I said, our quote unquote big cities. I mean, the biggest city we have in the district is Auburn, and the population is 80,000. So even our cities are really dependent on or for somebody from like you from Los Angeles and from Vegas, you would probably think of those as rural areas,
Mhm.
even though we consider them cities. Um, well, we're going out and having the conversations with them, and a lot of people tell me, I don't ever remember talking to a Democratic candidate about anything. And I'm going, well, you're talking to one now. Let's have a conversation. We have the Democratic Party, even in Alabama, has abandoned for a long time the rural communities where we can have a huge impact.
Mhm.
And we sort of, worked under the theory that, well, rural Alabama is never going to vote Democrat.
Mhm.
Well, I think rural Alabama is just like anybody else. They're going to vote what's best for them and their families.
Oh yeah.
And if we can make the case that having a Democrat in this seat is going to keep your hospital, the one hospital you have in this county, if we're going to be able to make the case that we're going to be able to keep the hospital open, if we're going to be able to make the case that we can, get you grants so that you can dig up that, those old water pipes that are soldered with lead solder,
Mhm.
and get you safe drinking water, that we can get you a functioning sewer system. When we can make that case in these rural communities, then we're going to get elected, and
Mhm.
that's what we have to do now. And I tell people, everybody that's working with this campaign, I've told people, saying, great, now we've got all the Democrats in the 11 counties behind us, which we do, and they're great. Now we need to start talking to everybody else. And so what we're starting to do now is trying to figure out how we, because, and I'm calling a couple of prominent Republicans this week,
Mhm.
which everybody is freaking out that I'm doing. But I mean, I can talk to Democrats all day long, and we're going to lose by 30%. I have to get into that bubble, that 40% in the middle that are independents and swayable Republicans, and have that conversation with them. But we have been so stovepiped in this state for so long that people don't even know how to have set up that conversation anymore.
Mhm.
I've got, good, hardworking people up and down this district. When I say, hey, we need, whenever somebody invites us to their house to meet their friends, I say, one condition, what's that? You got to invite Republicans. They're like going, I don't know that I know any Republicans. Well, go find a couple and bring them to your house. You've got to,
Oh
I say in this
man.
state, you've got to know a Republican.
Oh yeah.
Somewhere there's got to be a Republican, So it's just one of those, jumping over. I mean, it's like the Grand Canyon. I
Mhm.
mean, we have to be able to make that jump. And that's where we're at now. And we're doing, like I said, we're doing great. I'm really excited about where this campaign is at right now. We're I think far ahead of where I kind of thought we would be in the early summer. Um, Now we've got 150 days to, bridge that gap and start talking to Republicans and have the Republicans go, wait a minute, this guy is not what I was told Democrats were going to look like. I was told the Democrats were going to be anti-American communists that hated all of us, every Republican. And this guy is a veteran, served 30 years, went to Iraq, went to Afghanistan, believes in this country, loves this country, and wants to work for, individuals that are struggling, not for corporate bottom lines. And when we make that case and we can get out there to, I'm not worried about them liking what we have to say. I'm worried about getting out to them
Mhm.
and whether or not we can get to enough of them in the time we have available to make that impact, so they know that when they go to the polls, they're going to have somebody that's there to fight for them and not fight for, I'm fighting for the people and not for the party.
Wow.
I am loyal to the voters of this district, not any single other politician or any political party.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, listen, that's a great message, and I hope that it works out for you because
I
we do need
appreciate that.
change. Yeah, we do need change, and change needs to happen, and get a lot of these career politicians out because they're just not doing what they said they were
Yeah.
going to do.
I appreciate that. Well, I mean, I think our message is getting out. You found me somehow or the other. So, I mean, you're in Vegas.
Oh
So, I
yeah.
mean, it's, we're getting the word out. It's, we have another 5 months to run. And it's going to be, and I have every news article about me, in this campaign in Alabama for 3 months always had the phrase uphill battle right behind my name.
Mhm.
McInnis is fighting an uphill battle. And so I started carrying, I had a little ice axe lapel pin that I wore all the time. Because if I'm moving uphill, I better bring a mountaineer's axe to do it.
Yeah.
I've stopped wearing that because I think we're past that now. People are beginning to take this campaign very seriously.
Mhm.
And I know that we've got members of the Alabama Republican Party that are keeping an eye on me now. I catch people in my following me on Facebook who aren't
Mhm.
Democrats. And I catch a lot of accounts on Instagram that are following me that I don't know who they are, and their profiles are pretty empty. So I know that we're being watched, and that people are following us. So and to me, that means we're having impact and we're getting
Mhm.
traction, and it's beginning to make them nervous. And so that's exactly
Mhm.
where I want to be right now.
And so, where can people learn more about your campaign?
So the easiest way to do it is to go to Lee McInnis. That's LeeMcInnis. Lee McInnis, the number 4alabama.com. Yeah, it's a very long URL, but it was about the only one that was available. Lee McInnis, the number 4alabama.com, is our website. There's a ton of information on there about my background. It talks to you about my family, talks to you about my service in the Army and in the community. And then also I do fairly regular because I can post something here on Facebook or something like that, and you'll never see it again. But when I have a policy issue or I get a lot of questions from people, I will write it up in a one-page blog post, and we've got blog posts there that cover just about everything.
Mm.
And so you're also going to be able to, and I got to say this, or some of the people that work with me are being very mad. There's a donate button up there as well, where you can just click on that and it'll take you to Act Blue, and you can make a donation to the campaign, really quick and easy. And we appreciate literally every one of those because we are a grassroots campaign. We are not accepting any corporate money. We're not accepting any foreign interest money. So we are running on individual donations at this point. So any support to the campaign, if what you heard today makes you feel good about this campaign here in East Alabama, go to Lee McInnis, the number 4alabama.com, or you can just Google Lee McInnis and it pops up first. And go and learn about the campaign there.
Great. Well, thank you for your time.
All right, take care, Eric.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Take care and good luck with the campaign.
Thanks.